Behind me is the 2021 BMW 330e, and to be honest, I'm not sure BMW knocked this one out of the ballpark. Here's why. Don't get me wrong, I love the 3 Series. It has been the gold standard for sports sedans since it debuted with the E21 in the mid-70s, and I also love electrification. You know, electric cars are super fast, they're super quiet, they're very efficient. So when you combine electrification in the 3 Series, this 330e should be brilliant. But I'm not so sure it is, and we'll talk about that later in the video. First, let's kind of explain how it works. At the front of the vehicle, you'll find a 2-liter turbocharged gasoline engine. Just behind that, you'll find something BMW calls the E-Machine, but basically it's just a very large electric motor that is paired with the transmission. And then toward the back of the vehicle, you'll find a large high voltage battery and a fuel tank. When you start out in the morning, your car is fully charged. You'll have 23 miles of EV range, of electric only range according to the EPA. And then when that battery dies, the car turns into a standard hybrid, and you can go up to 320 miles when you combine both the gasoline and the electricity. There are a number of drive modes here in the 330e. The easiest to understand is a hybrid mode that will alternate between gas and electricity as the car sees fit. There's also a pure electric mode, which will lock the vehicle in EV only. There's a sport mode with something called Extra Boost. That's going to be your high performance setting. There's an adaptive mode, which will allow the vehicle to kind of figure out how you're driving and then alternate between power sources. And then there's even a battery control, and you can set a target value and the vehicle will maintain 100% or 50% or 70% battery. Alright, we're going to try a couple different 0 to 60 runs here in the BMW 330e. Now the first test I'm going to do is in full electric mode, and you can see here on the display it will only allow me to use 60% of the total available power, and that's because to get full power you need the hybrid mode. So in EV mode, I've come to a complete stop and floored in 3, 2, 1, go. 0 to 60 performance timer is running. Now, this is a weird sensation. There's like these weird pauses in the acceleration, even in EV mode. That is the car shifting, believe it or not. Gear to gear on electricity. There we go. There's 60 miles an hour in 11.99 seconds. So it's pretty slow in EV mode only, but it is fast enough to drive around in the city, and you can go up to 85 miles per hour in EV mode alone. For this next test, I've engaged sport mode, and I have something called Extra Boost, which is a combination of both the gas and electric systems. I'm in the same place as I was with electricity only, but this should be the fast mode. I'm just going to floor it in 3, 2, 1, floored. Oh, hard off the line. Definitely feel that electric motor kick in. There's 60 there. 5.84. That's a very respectable time, actually. Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with that. BMW says 5.6, but of course it's at sea level, so 5.84, not a bad result. Power numbers on the 330e are very respectable when you combine both the gasoline and E-Machine systems. Total system output is 288 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. Now that's more than the standard 2-liter BMW 330i. That one makes 255 horsepower. However, if you look at the BMW website, the company says that both the 330i and the more powerful 330e go 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds in rear-wheel drive form. So you gotta figure that even though this is more powerful, it's probably quite a bit heavier. Now the plug-in hybrid 3 Series is about $3,300 more than the standard 2-liter turbo, but this BMW does qualify for the $5,800 federal tax credit, which could mean that the plug-in hybrid might be more affordable in some cases than the regular gasoline car. However, they're still quite expensive. The 330e starts at $44,550. This one has equipped almost 60 grand. So here's the big dilemma. Is the 330e worth buying over the base 330i? Well, according to BMW, they are about the same quickness, they certainly look the same, potentially they could be priced similar, but what about total vehicle range, and what about miles per gallon? Now the 330i is pretty conventional, it doesn't have a plug-in hybrid system. Obviously on electricity only it can go 0 miles because it's not a plug-in hybrid, but the total range is 468 miles. That's a lot more than the total range on the 330e of just 320 miles, and that's because twofold. You'll notice here the gas tank is much larger on the 330i, 15.6 gallons versus 10.6 on the 330e. And then we get to efficiency, because when you kill the high voltage battery on the 330e, the EPA rates it at 28 mpg combined. Now the 330i is rated at 30 mpg combined all of the time. And the reason that the hybrid does worse is because, well, when the battery dies, you're just lugging around the big heavy battery and electric motor, which aren't necessarily helping out the MPGs all that much when you're primarily running on gasoline. The interior of the 330e is classic BMW, which is to say very high quality, but very no nonsense as well. Tons of buttons here in the center, which I do like. Volume knob as well. Of course, this does have the latest iDrive system. It does have this kind of funny toggle shifter to go from reverse to neutral to sport modes with the park button. But my favorite part is the digital instrument cluster, which shows you not only RPM, but percentage of energy being used, as well as the amount of power left. You do notice something a little bit peculiar when driving the 330e on electricity alone. It shifts gears as you accelerate. This is kind of odd because in just about every other EV, you'll find no transmission, they're direct drive. But no, the 330e, as you accelerate, the electric motor will actually go, except it doesn't make the noise, it just upshifts through the gears like a gasoline car, but there's no revs. It's the strangest thing. The back seat of the 3 Series is pretty tight. It's always been one of my complaints with the 3 Series, but you know, it's usable. I'm 6'1" tall. Actually, legroom is pretty decent in my driving position. Headroom is a little bit compromised, but seat cushion material is actually very comfortable and pretty supportive. Now, when you're in hybrid mode, the 330e picks up really quickly. It's got a lot of response because it combines both the turbo and the electricity to push you down the road. And speaking of other driving characteristics, it drives really well. I'd say probably one of the best in class because it is a 3 Series, and 3 Series are just so dynamic. The steering is crisp, the suspension is sorted, the whole setup just feels right. I love the way that BMWs drive, especially this latest G20 edition of the 3 Series. It's probably the best there's ever been. It's not the smallest, it's not the most nimble, but it is just so fun to drive. Now for the range test. The car is showing 100% state of charge, 16 miles of full electric range, which is below its EPA estimate of 23, but let's see how close to 23 miles we can get driving the 330e in real conditions. So I'm going to put it in electric mode, and then we'll see how far we can go before the gasoline engine kicks on. So I've got the car all set up in electric mode. It is 83 degrees out there. I'm going to turn my climate onto auto, AC on, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a real world test. I'm going to do a mix of city and highway driving. Let's get to it. All right, so we just hit 50% battery. We have driven 13.5 miles. So this range estimate of 16 miles on a single charge is way off. We may actually hit 23, 24 miles. Oh, it just went from 11 to 10 to 9 in 16 seconds. That was funky. But anyways, the car is performing really well. It is a little bit slow on electric mode, but luckily there is a kickdown switch at the end of the pedal, and when you hit that switch, it engages the gas engine and you really take off. But let's see how far we actually end up going on a single charge. We are on the highway now. I want to demonstrate the autonomous safety functions of this 3 Series. So you can see if I click this button here in the steering wheel, I've got my cruise control engaged, assisted driving functions on, and you can see this little steering wheel means I've got the lane keep assist on as well. And I love that you can see the cars right around me too, so I can see exactly who is in my region. So let's see how long it'll go hands off before it'll tell me to put my hands back on the steering wheel. There we go. Okay. It's 1,000, 2, 1,003. Still cruising along. Oop, there we go. So what's that, like 10, 15 seconds? and then it asks you to put your hand back on the steering wheel. But as long as you have a hand resting on the steering wheel, you can just cruise along, pay attention to the road, but the car does the driving for you. That's pretty cool, and I do like that display a lot. So the car is reading 1 mile of range. We have traveled 23.5 miles, so it consistently reads like 15 or 16 miles on a full charge, but clearly it can go further than that. That was a big surprise. I'm glad to see it actually met its EPA. In fact, we're beating its EPA. We still have 1 mile to go. Now the second half did seem to drop quicker than the first half, but I was doing mostly highway driving on the second half and kind of country road, city driving on the first half. So that makes sense. But let's see what happens if and when we hit 0 miles of range. So for 23.8 miles, still on 1 charge. All right, there we go. We are in hybrid mode. 25.3 miles. There you have it. All right, well, the battery is depleted, but because it's a plug-in hybrid, the car still says I can go 365 miles on gasoline, which is pretty good. And it drives the same, like it's no slower with the electricity depleted because it never fully depletes. It always keeps a nice reserve in the battery so that if you floor it, you get the maximum jolt. Now let's talk about charging it up. The 330e uses a 12.2 kilowatt hour battery, but of course they don't let you access all 12.2 kilowatt hours so you don't brick it, because you can't run a battery completely empty or it's destroyed. They let you access 9.09 kilowatt hours, leaving that little reserve just for the computer to be happy. Now, when it comes to charging, they do supply you with a standard 3-prong mobile connector. Plug this into the wall and it will take, well, a bunch of hours to fully charge. At home, I was drawing 1.8 kilowatts, and we can do some simple math to figure out how long it would take to charge up the battery. So if 9 kilowatt hours of it is accessible, divide it by 1.8 kilowatts, it'd be about 5 hours on a standard wall plug to charge from empty to full. Now, what about a level 2 charger, or 240 volts? Well, I've come to a charge point here, and we'll see how quickly it'll charge off that. So I don't know if it's an issue with the car or an issue with the charger, but it says unable to charge. Okay, we'll go down the road and try a different charge point. Luckily, we have the gasoline engine, so this would be a big problem in an EV if you really needed this level 2 charger, but because it's a gas car, we can keep going. Look at this! So it was a bad charge point socket. Oh, Lord. You can see charged completely at 7:48 p.m. Right now, it's 4:14 p.m. So, 3.5 hours? Alright, that makes sense. Let's see what kind of kilowatts we're pulling here. You can see we're drawing 3.32 kilowatts. I believe this station is rated at about 6.6. And I've read that this BMW can pull a maximum of 3.7 kilowatts. So on level 1, figure 5 or 6 hours. On level 2, 240 volt like this guy, figure, I don't know, 2.5 to 3.5 hours. But there you go! Plug-in hybrids, in theory, should be the best of both worlds. You've got the quiet efficiency of an electric motor, but the range of a gasoline engine when you need it. However, oftentimes, I kind of feel like plug-in hybrids are the worst of both worlds. They're not great electric cars because you're lugging around a big old gas engine, and they're not great gasoline cars because you're lugging around a big old battery, which is great when it's charged, but, you know, isn't all that helpful once it's dead. It feels like a lot of complexity compared to the standard 330i. The range, for my life, isn't all that useful, and you know, I worry about this thing long term. Am I really going to see the benefits of that electricity? Oh, you know, what's it going to be like 10 years down the road when I have to manage a high compression turbocharged engine as well as a complex electric system? Now let me know what you think in the comment section below. What do you think of the 330e? It looks brilliant, it drives great, but is the technology there on this plug-in to actually make you abandon gas or perhaps full electricity? Check out TFLcar.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews.